Ready?
Okay, thank you so much for letting me interview you. We'll try to go as fast as possible because I know you're busy. So,
Yes,
I've known you for a few years, and you're graduating Central Michigan University with a bachelor's in political science.
yes.
You have a
And public and nonprofit administration.
profit non yeah, I have this written down. Profit nonprofit organization with a minor in leadership and two undergraduate certificates in citizen engagement and public policy analysis. So can you
Yes.
tell me about that? What that means?
Specifically the undergrad certificates in minor or the major and all
Tell
of
me about
that.
all of it because I it's a
Political science is just studying political systems,
yes.
understanding policy, like different politics on different issues. Public and nonprofit administration is really understanding how a nonprofit works. What is like basically like how does an organization, a nonprofit work, and just learning on different roles there are in nonprofits and breaking the myth that nonprofits make no money because that is a
Yeah.
myth that's commonly said. My minor in leadership is really just concentrating and understanding different types of leadership styles. Really discussing like there's different types like authoritarianism, laissez-faire, some with like mixture of both. And then my undergrad certificates in citizen engagement was just me really taking a lot of classes and doing research on the best effective ways to civically engage the community, specifically students. And public policy analysis is really learning how to really digest different types of policies and comparing and contrasting them.
Yeah. Okay, so it's perfect. I told you lots of this presentation is about citizen engagement. So that's what
Yes.
I'm going to be focusing on in this interview. So I think I slightly mentioned it to you that I already decided I was doing my bachelor's in political science. And like you knew that. But I also
Yes.
decided because of this project, I decided to double minor in public relations and law.
Yes.
So for this project I'm interviewing you for, I'm studying how contemporary media culture stifles the impact of political movements through the dehumanization of major social events, the complication of the political media system, and normative satiation that pulls us into a loop of sending empty regards instead of making any true policy changes. So I'm going to start by asking you, what are some ways that public relations and politics overlap each other?
Overlap each other. So public policy and politics, you said?
Public relations and politics.
Public relations
So
and
like media, how media is used in politics.
really just more like communicating someone's like opinion on an issue or just like flaws or benefits of a policy. With mass media, it's just really easier to get a lot of information out to people and also spreading misinformation.
Mhm.
It's been a tool to counteract against certain policies being discussed or implemented. It's really used a lot, especially in ballot initiatives. Like here in Michigan, we
Yeah.
saw Proposal 3. There's a lot of misinformation going on from the opposing side, and that was a tool for them. I mean, it kind of worked. A lot of people didn't want to vote for this proposal because they were told false information. But on the other side, a lot of, especially young voters, we saw record turnout in the highest in the nation in Michigan. A lot of youth were really concerned about the issue of abortion. So the information being spread, like it was being spread throughout a lot of colleges. A lot of people were first-time voters, and they only were really voting. They're like the motivation to vote was because of the abortion issue, and that would not have happened without mass media.
Yeah. So I know we were talking earlier, and you mentioned how social media positively impacts politics because it acts as a catalyst for dissemination of information. There's an organization platform for event coordination, and I do acknowledge what you're saying. But I also looked at how social media acts as a primary emotive platform for persona redefinition, the sharing of moral codes, and compiling a shared belief system. So,
Yeah.
do so obviously, I did public relations for robotics,
Yes.
and I do public relations now in college.
Yeah.
Um, and although social media can possibly impact politics, it does chunk people into shared belief systems and groups with virtual
Yes.
collective identities, which then leads to a phenomenon of bystander effect,
Yes.
where there's a perceived diffusion of responsibility, and people tend to avoid taking any political action because they believe they don't have a voice, which also leads to people choosing not to vote. How do you think that public relations can be used to get people more interested in voting and political activism?
It's really just showing that their votes matter. Especially we saw like a previous election, there was a district in Colorado that was just a margin of like 500 plus votes, and just stressing the need, like when there's close races like that, every vote matters. We
Yeah.
saw it, especially in a lot of battleground states, like in Arizona, the race for the attorney general was just razor thin. So I
Mhm.
think what needs to happen with public relations is that demonstrating to citizens that their voice does matter because let's say you and your friends decide not to vote because you don't believe it'll make an impact, but if they all collectively voted, they can help swing an election. It's really important in battleground states. It's really hard though for public relations to get people to vote in states where the party that wins is like common. For example, like in Wyoming, Republicans always win. It's kind of
Yeah,
really hard to motivate people who don't vote because they're like, my vote really doesn't matter. Even if I got all my friends to vote, it would not have changed the outcome of the election. But
yeah.
it's really, you can really see that impact in the battleground states, and I think that's where public relations really need to focus on
Mhm.
demonstrating like how close these elections are and the consequences of them.
Mhm. So with contemporary media culture came the advent of entertainment, such as late-night talk shows and SNL, which is a
Mm,
portmanteau of entertainment and information, which worked to captivate the audience's attention. However, it also blurred the lines between fact and fiction because it rewards
yes.
sensationalized, scandal-driven headlines for concrete information. How do you think that the everyday consumer of these infotainment platforms could still enjoy the aspect of entertainment without being distracted by the true issue?
That's really tricky. Personally, I don't like to watch a lot of those. It's just not interesting for me to watch those kind
Yeah.
of skits. For me personally, I believe a lot people that watch that tend to be really active voters.
Mhm.
So it's not really concerned about people who are not voting seeing those skits really. With those scandals, there's really not much you can do. Again, we know television. It's the whole goal is to make profit, and those
Yeah.
skits and those headlines get people to watch it. It's kind of really hard to like blur like the facts and the exaggerations. Maybe what they can do is provide information where people can get resources if they want to learn more about the topic. Probably outside resources, so not saying, "Look at our article that we made," because that's kind of biased. It should be like different networks that are discussing about that news source.
Yeah. The other presence of rhetorical media echo chambers, which I think we've discussed a bunch, which people with distinct political beliefs will get trapped in hypothetical feedback loops in which they're fed news information that reflects their own personal dogmas, which effectively deflect any data that contradicts the preconceived belief system of what is and isn't moral. How do you believe that these echo chambers impact the way in which politics is experienced? And how can the everyday consumer of mass media avoid being trapped in these echo chambers?
Um, well, it's really difficult for people to get out of those cycles on social media because of algorithms. Algorithms in social media are based off like what you enjoy watching, what you like, what you're commenting on. So to break that cycle, you'll individuals will have to actively research different biases going on, and that's just a lot more work for people, and they're not going to do that. So for that cycle to be broken, algorithms have to go away, but that's not going to really happen. Social
Yeah.
media companies would not do that. Users would not go on it as often if they're seeing stuff they don't agree with. What was the first part of the question again? I definitely answered the second part, but not the first.
How do you believe that these echo chambers impact the way in which politics is experienced?
It's just the fact that like people are being told facts, but they're not going to believe it if it's not from their, excuse me, from the people they're used to, from the people they've been told information from. So, for example, if we see left wing viewers, they're only going to listen to those type of media sources and just going to ignore any other one. So that really makes them really hard to swing voters, which could possibly contribute why swing voters are becoming very uncommon or independent. I mean, because people are getting stuck in a cycle and they can't really get out of it just because there's a lot of obstacles in the way.
Yeah. Um, so semantic satiation has become a norm in contemporary media culture. I think we have also talked about this a lot, such as sending thoughts and prayers while disregarding the actual policy and change that isn't being made. Because people will think that saying, oh, thoughts and prayers is actually going to make an impact when it doesn't. So how should the everyday consumer of mass media make sure that in times of crises that their voices are actually being used in a positive manner?
So you're asking how their voice could be used in a positive manner.
Mm. Instead of just saying thoughts and prayers. Or just
Um,
along those
well, the
lines.
good well, the good thing about those surface level engagements is that it's bringing awareness of the issue. It's just getting
Mm.
people to the next step. It's not, we start with awareness, which is a good start, but people need to actively be engaged with their community members. And I think the biggest struggle is that I mean, at least in schools, we don't teach students how to like be actively engaged or write how to write to like their state legislature or even federal legislature. It's kind of very confusing. It's very intimidating if individuals don't know how to take that first step. If we got people to take that first step of like writing to their state senator or going to any sessions, then people will probably be more comfortable. And not
Mhm.
only that, it's also just a lot more time just to do those types of engagement. And sessions are held in the state legislature and federal level during the day when most people are working, and that's probably definitely intentional. So people are not able to actively engage.
Mhm. Yeah. Finally, politicians and mass media tend to use buzzwords such as radical left and socialist to exaggerate their argument. So, how do you think the everyday consumer should make themselves aware of these buzzwords so they don't get distracted?
It's a very tricky question because again, it falls into that cycle where people are stuck in these one leaning news sources or people. And it's kind of hard to at what because the buzzwords are used so often, it becomes like a common like vocabulary. It's kind of like once you get into a habit, it's kind of hard to break out of that. So that's
Yeah.
a very difficult task to do. Especially if people are not going to listen to any other side. That these labels are just misleading or just flat out false. So I'm not really sure possible solution yet.
Mhm. Cool. That's all I have for you.
Sweet,
Thank
sounds
you.
good. I gotta tell
Wait,
you. Oh wait, you can end this meeting first.
wait, no, I need to freaking how do I pause? Stop recording.